you are like me and know that free enterprise is the greatest opportunity in the world, but you also see there are huge issues starting to arise, like why is mentorship decreasing in popularity? Why do entrepreneurs like us who love to succeed see people fail at the top and never leave true significance? And how do people like us make a lasting impact on the world? And is it possible for enough entrepreneurial leaders together to make a real difference? These are the blaring questions, and this podcast is the answer. Journey with me, your host, Christian. Together we will challenge the status quo and conquer our legacies. Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, Side Hustler Online Business Gurus. Thank you. I appreciate every single one of you for just tuning in. And I really am humbled to have every single one of you listeners because, guys, I'm really excited to bring this next individual to you. The reason why is because we are bombarded with finance this, this is where to do it, this is how to do it. But is there a simple, streamlined way of when you're making a good amount of money in today's world, where to put your finances? This guy today, he has an incredible knowledge, incredible wisdom that he has been able to share with the millennials and the younger generation to be able to put their money in the right place. We're really excited to have him on board. He grew up with a great passion to help other people work hard and have fun, working on his grandpa's ranch in Montana every summer, helped him learn how to work hard. Living in Brazil for 2 years taught him how amazing people are and how fun and awesome service and helping others can be. So I am so excited to bring to you Adam Tafoya. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you again for just being on our podcast, and we're really excited to hear kind of what you have to offer, and obviously the vision you have for where you're going. So, if you don't mind, I know I mentioned just a little brief synopsis of who you are, but if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Breaking Bad country in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm sure almost everybody's familiar with that show if they're not familiar with Albuquerque. And I love it here. We've got mountains, we've got desert, we've got forests. There's kind of a huge variety of stuff. And I do a lot of rock climbing. And so I'm outside all the time and just love it here. My wife is from here. We've got 3 crazy children that keep us on our toes. But you had mentioned living in Brazil. I lived in Brazil for a couple years, loved it, learned Portuguese. Went to college and studied and got my degrees in Portuguese and Spanish. And so we could do the interview in Portuguese or Spanish if you want to.
We have translation below, all right?
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, those things taught me a lot. Growing up, having different experiences with different family members, working on my grandpa's ranch, gave me a lot of really, really cool experiences and just taught me a lot. And when I got done with college, I had a real strong desire to start my own business, and I also really liked money, and so I thought that going into financial advising and investment advising was a really good fit, right? I could start my own business and talk about money and earn money, and I did that with a large investment company for about 6 years, and got a lot of good experience and learned a ton. And was able to work with a lot of different clients. And then I had a really strong desire to really change the way that we were working with people. Because we saw this huge lack of financial education and financial literacy, not only in our community, but with the clients that we were working with. And so myself, my wife, my brother, we have an assistant that works with us as well. We started working on building our education platform.
That's awesome. So who is your that person that you really help that you're looking for, hey, this information will be beneficial to this person? Because I know we talked about your big market right now is millennials, and that is a huge market, and they're underneath financial strain. But I'd love to hear kind of this, your content, what you and your team have been able to develop really impacts this group.
Yeah, so our niche, our target market is married millennial entrepreneurs, right? Because that's the exact position that I'm in. Married and in that millennial age group, and owning a business. And so just from that perspective, we feel like we can really talk to the specific concerns and questions and issues that come up with married millennial entrepreneurs. We have clients that are a lot older than that, and we have some clients that are younger than that too. But we know, again, with our personal experience and with what we're really striving to do, that we can provide a lot of help and a lot of value for that group.
Definitely. And I know like right now, I mean, there's just like I mentioned in the intro, it's like we're bombarded with all this information. This, Warren Buffett says this, and Tony Robbins says this, and Billy Bob and my financial advisor says this. And, it really, this, what I really appreciate what you've done is like you just made it very simple and streamlined it to say, hey, this is, your step-by-step guide answering a lot of questions. What would you say is like the number one thing that people mostly struggle with, or the biggest hurdle, would you say?
Yeah, one of the things, and this may differentiate us a little bit from maybe some other advisors, definitely, but other financial programs or budgeting programs that are out there, is we focus a lot on the mindset around money, right? And there are a lot of other people and lots of people that I follow who also focus on that mindset, right? Having that abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. But I think, even before you get into, oh, where should I put my money? How do I budget? Even before you get into that stuff, a lot of the underlying issues or concerns come from the mindset that people have around money. And so that's one of the first things that we talk about in the course is how to create a good relationship with money, right? Most people have this like love-hate relationship with money. They don't like looking at their bank account a whole lot, a lot of people, because they're scared of what they're going to see. Oh man, um, and they don't quite understand maybe what to do with investments or how things work, right? What's a 401k? What's an IRA? What's a 403b? And so they just feel a little intimidated, or they don't, and it's no fault of their own, right? I never took a finance class in high school. It wasn't offered, right? Like a financial literacy class is not even offered in college, or at least not required, And so most people, they learn a lot of stuff as they go through school, but they don't really learn some of those really important things, like how to manage your money and
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And so uh, the taboo idea in our culture as well, right? That like we don't talk about money. It's somehow rude, or some way rude to talk about money, right? Sitting at the table with the family and you ask dad how much money he makes, and it's like, well, like we don't talk about that. You don't ask people that question, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of ingrained in us, and so all of us grow up with these kind of negative feelings around money. Even if we, start earning more money, um, we still have some of those negative things ingrained in us, right? And so, we really focus on like changing that mindset from the scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, and then really creating a good relationship with money, so that it's not this like intimidating, taboo thing. It's not something that like you have to feel um, maybe ashamed about, right? Again, even if you are earning money, I talk to a lot of people who earn a decent living, um, but they're ashamed of the fact that they don't know a whole lot, right? Like about investments or how certain things work, right? And so we really want to change that, and how people feel about money and how they think about it and the relationship that they have with it. And then all those other things can come, right? Like where to put it, how to invest it, what's the best, stock to pick, learning about taxes and how to minimize taxes. All of that stuff can come after that. But I think sometimes people do it backwards, where, especially if you work with a financial advisor, right? They're going to teach you, or they're going to talk to you about, you know, this is the portfolio, these are the funds that you should have, these are the stocks or whatever, right? This is the rate of return. And they never get into the mindset around having a good relationship with money. And so I think people still struggle with that a lot.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that because, what I see is there's like two sets of people really. Ones that are just starting out, they like have no clue where to start and then just get overwhelmed. And there's others that like, like entrepreneurial that have built an incredible business and they're just making a lot of money. But then just like you mentioned as well, how to minimize taxes, how to, put your money into where it's a growth stage, not a profit stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm really intrigued with, honestly. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because what I realize there's a lot of books that are kind of like starting for the people that are like, oh, how do I get involved? But there's not that many books that say, okay, how do I now that I'm making money, how do I start growing it? How do I start scaling it and really optimize my income? Because I mean, like you said, it's not a matter of how much you make, it's a matter of how much you bring home,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, and how much you invest. So like for the individual that, let's say for example they're making 100,000 plus, and maybe they were in a business doing info products or whatever, right? For that individual, what are some good systems or um, vehicles, financial vehicles would be, obviously everybody is different naturally, you'd have to customize it to their plan, but what are some good vehicles for them to kind of um, minimize taxes?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to that education piece, right? And one of our goals is to really educate people on what is available out there, so that once you're in that position to start saving, start investing, that you have that foundational education to know, well, yeah, these are the options that I have, based on my situation, and this is what I can do. One of the first things that we always start with is this idea of the three buckets, right? No matter where you put your money, uh, in different types of investment accounts or savings accounts, no matter where you put your money, it's taxed uh, differently, right? And so one of the buckets is what we call a taxable bucket, and that's stuff like um, uh, uh, bank account, savings accounts, anything you get a 1099 for, right? Every year you have to pay tax on it, right? So it's always taxable. Could be mutual funds in an individual account, could be stocks in an individual account, anything you get a 1099 for. The second bucket would be tax deferred. So this is where most retirement accounts fall into: IRA, 401k, 403b, pensions, right? You don't pay any tax up front. The IRS gives you that tax break. And I always say it's like the IRS doesn't make you pay any tax on the seed,
Hmm.
but then they want you to pay tax on the tree later, right?
Yep. Hmm.
They want you to pay tax on all that money that went in and all the growth. And there's advantages to those, and knowing when to take advantage of those is important. And then the third bucket is the tax free bucket. And when we ask people, later on in life, or when you get to retirement or in the future, because again, working with millennials, like retirement seems so far off. That word, like it's not really a good word to use, right? And so we always say future planning.
Yeah.
For your future, where would you ideally like most of your money to come from? And everybody says, well, I don't want to pay taxes, I want tax-free money, right? And we say, okay, great. Well, there are really only two options if you look at completely tax-free money, and that's Roth IRA. You pay the tax up front, and then that money gets to sit in there, and you can pull it out tax-free later. And permanent life insurance, right? And people have different ideas about permanent life insurance, but it is what it is. That's the only other vehicle that is completely, you can put money in on an after-tax basis and then take it out tax-free later, right? And again, depending on the situation, some people that may work for some people it doesn't. For high earners, it does, because typically, if they're earning, let's say, over 200,000, they no longer get these tax deductions for like some of the
Yeah.
IRAs.
Traditional. Yeah.
They can't put into a Roth IRA anymore. And so, well, what's left? Well, I can put into stocks, but that goes back to this taxable bucket. I got to pay tax every single year.
Hmm.
And so, like, then permanent life insurance is really the only other tax-free option, right? Completely tax-free. There's like municipal bonds, which can be like state tax-free or federal tax-free,
Yeah.
depending on where you buy them, but not 100% tax-free. And so what we like to talk to people about is really analyzing where do you want most of your money to come from? And everybody almost always says tax free, right? I've never talked to somebody who says, oh, like I want taxable money. That's fine. They always say I want tax free money. And so that's great. That should be your goal. But where is most of your money now? And most people have their money in these two buckets: the taxable bucket, because they have it in savings accounts or maybe mutual funds, and they're getting taxed on those every year, or retirement accounts, right? And they're getting a tax deduction up front, so that can help them, especially if you're a higher earner. That can help, but it really doesn't help for the future or for the long term. And so we always like to educate people on, these are the options, and this is how your money is taxed. Now, based on your situation and your future goals, what is going to be the most efficient, where's going to be the most efficient place to put your money now, right? And so we want to look out a little bit into the future, and kind of an exercise for people to go through. Look a little bit out into the future of like where you want money to come from and how much you want. And that'll help you determine where to put your money now, right? And again, most of the time, if you can capitalize or maximize those tax-free accounts. Roth IRA, you fall into those categories of, you can actually contribute to one, then try and maximize that and put as much money as you can every year. And we work with a lot of people that make, over 200,000 if they're married, and they can't put into the Roth IRA, right? And so the other option would be to contribute as much as you can to an IRA. There's no income limit for contributing to an IRA, but then you can do what's called conversions on a yearly basis. And it's called a backdoor Roth IRA. But if you make too much to put into the Roth, you put into your IRA, and then you convert to the Roth, and you can do that every single year.
Oh, I didn't know that. Dang, that's awesome. So does that take a certain financial advisor, or like just anybody could do that, or like a specific IRA? Or
no, yeah. So let's say you have a Fidelity account or Vanguard account. Let's say you have an IRA, and maybe you have a Roth, right? Because like we work with a lot of people who, maybe they're making 100,000 now, or let's say 3 or 4 years ago they were making 100,000, so they opened up their Roth, they're putting money into it, and now they're making more, over 200,000 as a married couple. Because I think for an individual, it's like 140,000.
yeah.
I'd have to look at the tax table again. But they're making over 200,000 now, so they're ineligible to contribute to the Roth IRA anymore. They can still keep it, right? The IRS is going to say you got to shut it down or you can't keep it. They can still keep it, but if you're making more, you can't contribute to it anymore. And so then their only option, if they want to get money into that account, is to do that strategy. They put money into the IRA, on an individual IRA that you open up on your own. You can put in $6,000 a year. So they put in $6,000 a year, and then they transfer that immediately over. They pay the tax, because when you put into the IRA, it's pre-tax money.
Oh, so that is taxable. To switch it over to Roth.
You pay the tax just like you would if you were contributing to the Roth in the first place.
Yeah.
But you're able to get that money over to the Roth.
Okay.
Even if you make too much.
So now I do know, like, for example, and we're kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but I am just curious on this. So I know, like, the Roth, you have a max limit of what you can put in there. Let's assume the same situation, you're making more than 140 as an individual, or 200, more than 200 as a couple. But through the traditional, okay, so I know there's a max of the traditional as well. You can only put up so much. So if you put as much, the max, which is, I think, what would you just say, 6,000 a year? 6,000 a year. You put it into the traditional. You do the back door, and you put it over to the Roth. Can you still put another 6,000 in the traditional because you switch that money over to the Roth? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So if you do that contribution, it counts for that year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Even if you do convert it over. And so sometimes here's another way to get more. Like I did a video a little while back, and I can maybe dig it up and find it again. But like, how could you potentially put in up to $30,000 a year into a Roth when the limit is $6,000 a year? Right. Well, if you make under a certain amount of money and you can contribute, you put in $6,000 a year to the Roth. So let's say they're making under 200. Put in 6,000 to the Roth. put in 6,000 to the IRA, and then transfer that over. Now you have 12,000 that you put into the Roth in 1 year.
Well, so
Well,
you
if
can.
you had more money in the IRA that you can convert, the IRS doesn't put a limit on how much you can convert, because when you convert, you pay the tax, and they want all that tax money, right?
Yep.
So let's say you had $25,000 in your IRA, you could convert all of that over to the Roth and get $25,000 a year into the IRA.
Mm-hmm.
So most people, if they're working for somebody, they're putting into a 401k, which is pre-tax, in that pre-tax or tax deferred bucket, that middle bucket. And sometimes the employers will let you take money out of that as long as it goes to another retirement account. So
Yeah.
you're getting a match from your company, they put in, and you're contributing to the 401k, but you don't want it to stay pre-tax forever. You want it into the Roth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take that money out of the 401k and do the same thing and convert it over to the Roth, right? So you can potentially get a lot more than the 6,000 a year into the Roth.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. See, and this information is, most individuals are always sitting there like, there's too many millionaires. This sucks. Billionaires, and the reality is the reason why they're very wealthy individuals out there is because they know all these rules and they surround themselves around around Adam. They learn from individuals like Adam. Where these are the best ways. I'm making this amount of money. I don't just go on spend it on a Lambo. Don't go spend it on a big old thing. And I kind of want to segue into this a little bit because, you just recently put a post out there on LinkedIn that says, delayed gratification, only spend money on things that you love. Now, obviously, we all have to spend money on bills and things we don't necessarily love, but we also spend a lot of money on junk or unnecessary things. So really analyze what you're spending on and cut out the little unnecessary things so you have more to spend on the things you do love. And this is what I find so interesting. I want to drive this home because what have you found like the top things that people spend a ridiculous amount of money on that will not move their life forward?
Yeah. So probably the biggest things, because, we look at what's going to make the most impact. Biggest things are like where you live, right? And if you love the house that you're in, and obviously you can afford it, then that's great. Like that's what you're spending money on and you love it. The second biggest thing is cars, right? So I see people, they want to have a nice car, but they go and buy a new car, right? And
Years,
even if
right?
you make a lot of money, right?
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with having a new car, but then people are, they have a $700, $800, $900 a month car payment. And what we want to teach people is that's fine if you can afford it and if you love that. But did you analyze what you could be doing with that money instead? Like let's say you bought like a used car and your payment is $400 a month. Well, now instead of having a $900 a month payment, you have a $400 and you have $500 a month that you could be putting towards, let's say, like a vacation. Would you love that vacation more than you love the new car? Would you love the experiences and the memories that you create more than that new car, right? And I think for most people, that's the case, right? For me, like, I bought a used car and like I was looking at this brand new truck and I wanted this brand new truck. And then I realized, well, like I'd much rather like have this other truck. It's not as expensive, it's still nice, not as expensive, but I can take that truck and I can take my family and I can go create memories and have adventures and I can use that money to put towards things that I really love. And so that's kind of that idea. People spend money on Starbucks coffee every day, and that's great if you love Starbucks coffee, but analyze first where you're spending money and then like ask yourself, are those things that you absolutely love, or are they just things like, oh, I want it or I'll buy it? And now you've just used that money that you could have used to spend on something that like would really, like the Marie Kondo really spark joy.
Yep.
Right. That you really love. Because I think most people spend money on things that, like they're okay with it. And they'd be much happier if they were just spending money on things, like cut out a lot of those other things and just spend money on things you love.
Mhm. And see, I think that's what's so interesting. And that's why I want to foot stomp it, because I mean, I get so mad at, I shouldn't say mad, but I get frustrated a little bit because I see people that are complaining that, oh, you know what, this individual's making more money than I am. Well, then stop spending money on HBO, Amazon, Netflix, Disney. I mean, like, how many services, TV services do you need,
Yeah.
guys? You know what I mean? Like, stop that, and then stop going to, Tim Hortons every single day. I am, and I want to be honest with you, I am a sucker for Tim Hortons. I love the little Tim Horton donuts and stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Hortons, but it's got little donuts and stuff. But anyways, but I realize that that's $6 or $8 every single day, right? And so you start adding that up, that's 300, $400, just boom, gone, done. And that's one of the things that I think, a lot of people, they have this, I guess, I don't know what it is, this hurdle in their head. They're making 75 grand, but gosh, 75 grand just goes by unless you actually put a name to it. And,
Yeah.
how do you help people? Because I think sometimes people have a negative connotation toward budget, because budget means, oh, I can't afford it. When in all reality, a budget really is just telling where the money's going. It's not saying you can't
Mhm.
afford going out to, Tim Hortons. You can't afford going out to, um, Starbucks coffee. You can do that, but just tell your money where to go, right? And I'd
Yeah.
love to, kind of get your perspective on, like, how do you help people kind of get that into? Because like you were talking about, it is a mindset, and it is a habit switch as well. And
Yeah.
it's not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. When it's interesting you bring up budgets, we just revised one of our like mini courses that we're still trying to narrow down the title, but we had originally called it Budget Suck. And now it's called Bye Bye Budget.
There we go.
Uh,
That's good. That's good.
Again, that mindset and switching that mindset, budgets tend to create that scarcity mindset, because it's the same thing with diets, right? In imposing restrictions, and a lot of times diets fail because of that. Like, you're imposing restrictions on yourself, right? You can't have certain things, and that's what your focus is on, the things you can't have. And diets, just like a budget, rely a lot on motivation and willpower, and we only have so much of that, and eventually that will, like, you'll run out of it, right? It's like having a bowl of candy on your kitchen counter, and you're on a diet, and you say, well, like, that candy is just for decoration and for other people, and you walk by it 10 times, 15, 20 times a day, and the first 5 times you're able to, like, you have the willpower to say, no, I'm not going to eat it. And then the 10th time, like, well, like,
Hmm.
I worked out today, so I can have one piece,
Yep.
and then the 20th time, like, you're eating the whole bowl, right? Because your willpower by the end of the day is completely gone. That's the same thing that happens with diets and budgets. And so we want to help people to change that mindset from not focusing on the things that you can't have and focus on the things that you can have. That goes back to, like, only buying the things that you love, cutting out everything else, and like, eliminating this idea of like having a budget, right? We all need to manage our money, but when people think of budgets, like, again, budgets suck, and I don't think anybody really likes budgets, but they feel that they need one. But if you can set up systems in place instead of having to rely on motivation and willpower, set up automatic systems in place that just help you be good with your money, then you're going to be much better off. Um, one of the other key things that we focus on is in this idea, right, of saving for the future and budgeting, or not budgeting, right? Because we don't like that budgeting idea, is always paying yourself first. And if you, sometimes that's obviously easier said than done, but you can set up a system in place where you pay yourself automatically. You get your money, and it either goes into a retirement account right away, or it goes into a bank account and then is transferred. You can set up these automatic things, right? It's transferred automatically over to another bank account that you're not going to touch, right? You set up systems like that, and then you don't have to rely on, like, having to remember or having the motivation to save things. What most people end up doing, they make 75 or 100,000 or whatever they make, is they pay everybody else first, and then they say, well, I'm going to keep for myself whatever's left over.
Yep.
And then nothing is ever left over, right? But if you pay yourself first, then it's okay to spend whatever's left over, right? Because you already took care of yourself. So we talk a lot about setting up those systems.
Automation is really truly key. Now that you have things that you can really put automation towards, gosh, Roth IRA, put this into savings, put this into checking, and I know personally that myself, I know that sometimes not even looking at the money, not even knowing it's there, just taking it out, putting it into, Matthew Asia funds over here or whatever. That's like, oh, and then what's incredible is, like you said, it switches your mindset to say, like, I don't even realize that $200 is gone. Or I don't realize that $800 is gone. It's gone. And then I just work with what I got. I'm like, oh, I never even knew that I had $800 before. And it is interesting. Like, I can't, foot stomp that enough as well. Like, automate this, just put an automation, forget about it. And you'll see incredible results. So, like, really, I want to kind of focus on this next thing here, because you mentioned something that was really powerful. You were saying, like, really it's inputting these certain mindset systems, being able to have the right, what was the word that you used? Ample mindset, right? Abundance mindset. That's
Abundance mindset, yeah.
abundance. So, like, where did you get that idea? I mean, were there some books that you read? There are some mentors in your life that kind of helped you, like, realize, hey, money is just a tool, and we can utilize it to obviously enhance ourselves further.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, like, I had mentored my dad. He worked for the post office, but he had some rental properties. He had a vending machine business for a while. So I remember going and, like, filling up the vending machines with him and collecting the money, right? And then he'd say, hey, if you do certain things right, like, we weren't even here when those people were putting that money in. And it's like, wow, like, you don't have to work. Like, we had to work, and go fill this stuff up. And, but, like, that idea of, we weren't even here and that was happening. And the same with, like, the rental properties, right? And that idea, and that kind of really opened my eyes to, like, I can have a regular job and I can do these other things and really have the things that I want, or have the amount of money that I want. Or I can, like, I don't have to work for somebody. I can go start a business and do that same thing. But I've taken lots of courses and been a part of masterminds, like Darren Hardy, Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, even some of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad stuff, right? And like, reading that stuff and going through those things, even further expanded my mindset about, like, really what's out there. Because, again, I think all of us kind of grow up with, like, some of these limitations, like, well, I can only earn so much, or, like, that amount of money is crazy, I'll never have that amount of money, right? And we kind of think these things, and that limits us. And so if we can see, like, the possibilities that are out there, and learn from other people, like, those things have had a huge influence on me. And so, like, I do a lot of things with my money and investing and how I use my money, that I might not tell certain people, right? Like clients, because maybe they're not in the right mindset.
Yeah.
But the person who's in the right mindset, they're like, I know that they're going to receive those things in the right way. Right. But again, that goes back to, like, that education piece. If you're educated on what's out there, the options that are available out there, then you have that foundation, and you can then make really good choices for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of it is also that confidence. So a lot of people don't have a lot of confidence, especially with money, because maybe they haven't been good with money, or they don't think they can make a certain amount. And so then, like, they keep that with themselves, and it just limits them. Mm-hmm. Right? Because they don't have that confidence, or I don't understand that. So, like, I have people say all this, like, I don't understand that the numbers and math and stock market and all of that. and so they don't have this confidence, and it keeps them from making good choices. But if you have that education, and it's really like simple things, right? Like we talked about the buckets, you understand that, like that's a huge part of being able to make a good choice. Understanding kind of that concept, that increases your confidence, and you can make really good choices.
And see, that's what I find very interesting, because you were just saying this is like, how do you win a game if you don't know the rules, right? And I think that's what a lot of people come into this game of finance, this education, right? And they don't know where to start. They get overwhelmed. And there's really kind of three stages, if you will. People that are just getting started, they're like, okay, what are these tools? What are these vehicles that we can utilize to put my money into? And then there's a growth stage where you're actually making a lot of money. You're doing a lot of great things. But the reality is, how do you optimize that? How do you make sure that you're not giving so much to Sam, or how do you, obviously minimize those taxes, and how do you obviously grow it? Do you buy other businesses to put the money into, buy real estate? You know what I mean? There's a lot of different avenues behind that. And then there's a third where it's like, okay, now we got to think about trust and, other things that carry on that legacy of wealth. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, for example, my dad and we just had this conversation where he's got some real estate. He put it into a trust for future, right?
Yeah.
Because I've heard individuals that, several wealthy people in the news that, had a huge amount of wealth, $20 million, right? Big movie stars. But in fact, Uncle Sam got almost 30% of that. I think even more than that, honestly. Just because they didn't think about it logically. And there are tools out there. They're not illegal. They are legal tools that you can utilize. And I think that's what I think is just so frustrating. Like, for example, as an entrepreneur, and I'm just talking to the entrepreneurs, okay? I have a health savings account. The reason why I have a health savings account is because, guess what? It's tax deductible. What does that mean? Well, guess what? If I'm making 100,000, I think I can put 6,000 in as an individual. All of a sudden, my taxes come down, right? And that's the same thing with Roth IRA. But see, all these little tips and tricks that most people don't even realize, and then we're sitting back and like, how does everybody else become wealthy? Well, because they ask people like Adam, and I can't explain to you far enough, and this is the reality. Yes, you can go on YouTube. Yes, you could go on Google. Yes, you could find this stuff, but there's nothing like it when you pick up a phone and say, hey, Adam, the stock market just lost 1,000 points today. The stock market just went up 500 points. What the heck am I doing? Right? And have a strategic plan. Now, obviously, and the reason why I brought that 1,000 points up, because it did just drop 1,000 points today.
Yeah.
But, for those that are freaking out, you are not, Adam. Why not?
Yeah, that goes back to that, like, confidence. And I mean, there to some extent, there's kind of always some of that, right? Like, well, like, might lose some money, or if you're taking some risks, right, which isn't always bad, then there's always that element, right? That, well, you lose some money, but that's kind of the game you play to potentially earn. But I think a lot of that goes back to that confidence. If you have that foundation and that knowledge of what's available out there, what your options are, what you should be doing, and you've thought through, so you've learned those things, and then you've thought through those things and asked yourself some of those questions, right? Where do I want money coming from in the future? Where should I be putting money now? What can I be doing to lower my taxes now? But also in the future, you kind of ask yourself a lot of those questions. Am I spending money on the right things? What do I want my future to look like? What's my mindset around money? And then you educate yourself. Like, that creates that confidence, so that when things like that happen, okay, I know when the market is down, like, that's probably a really good time to buy.
Yep.
When most people do the opposite, right? Because they're afraid, they retreat. I know when the market's going up, like, that's maybe a good time to sell or stay in, right? But if you know and have that education, then you can make those good decisions because you have that confidence. And that's one of the things that we focus on, and we really want to help, because, again, working with a big investment company like I did, the traditional model of most financial advisors, and there are tons of great financial advisors out there, but the traditional model is, well, you come and work with us, and like, I, as the advisor, end up doing most of the work, and maybe I educate my client a little bit along the way, but I'm the one managing the account. I'm the one looking at the funds and the stocks. Like, I know what's going on. The client doesn't necessarily always know. So there are clients who work with advisors and they still like lack that knowledge, right? Or they still don't have that education. So we really wanted to change it and help people to gain that education for themselves, so they can have that foundation. Um, and like we always say, if we do our jobs right as financial coaches and advisors and through our education platform, if we do our job right, they'll be able to have the confidence and the knowledge to do it on their own. But if we do our jobs right, hopefully they won't want to, right? They'll want to stay part of our community. They'll want to stay engaged in the stuff that we're doing in our community. But like, if we did our jobs right, like we accomplish our first goal and they can do everything on their own, then that is amazing.
And that's the
So
ultimate goal. But see, that's reality. It's like teach a man how to fish, but naturally now that you've created a fisherman or a fisherwoman, right?
yeah,
Someone that's been able to go out there and create results, and they can teach their kids and so forth, and that's what's really awesome. I really appreciate what you're doing, because you're exactly right. I've talked to numerous individuals, and it's like, yeah, the financial advisor knows, but then all of a sudden all your customers and clients start calling you and saying, oh my gosh, the stock market just lost 1,000 points. What should I do?
yeah,
Should I, and they all freak out because you didn't educate them on, like you just mentioned, the strategic plan and having the right mindset, and said, hey, actually, you should give me more money so then we could buy a lot more stuff when the market goes down, because
yeah,
just like you said, that's how it goes, buy it on discount,
yeah.
So, is there anything else that you'd like? Well, first of all, how can they reach out to you? Your education, your material, obviously to just have a conversation with you. How can they reach out to you, Adam?
Yeah, so educatedwallet.com. We have resources on there. LinkedIn, in terms of like our daily content. Adam Tafoya. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. If you want to follow me on
Nice.
TikTok,
There you go.
Adam Tafoya 1. You can find, and we do a lot of content on there. A lot of polls, a lot of questions. Typically every day on there, I'll say, hey, if you have a financial question, ask me. And I get people that send in questions every day. We do the same thing on LinkedIn, but I encourage people, like, obviously we have resources and courses and we have some free stuff as well. So you can be on the lookout for those. But if you have questions, like, my main goal is to make sure you get your questions answered. Because a lot of times that's the first step for people. It's really intimidating for most people to even talk about money, let alone go and talk to, like, financial advisor, a guy in a suit and tie in a big office. Like, that's even more intimidating. So then most people just don't do it. And so one of my huge desires and goals is just to help people get their initial questions answered, right? And then that can set them off on, like, a really good path. And so if you have questions, like on LinkedIn or, on TikTok or on Instagram or on Facebook too, send those questions in and we'll answer them.
Yeah, and guys, the that information will be actually in the description below, so definitely check that information out. And I'm telling you from a personal experience, Adam is an expert in his industry. He is one of the leaders, really kind of bringing this whole information aspect to it, leading with value, and then of course, obviously inputting and implementing a system and a plan into play. But I think to me that is what's so incredible about what he's doing right now. So definitely reach out to him, give him a call, even though he's in Arizona. He'll be glad to accept your calls and just in that communication and have that conversation. But is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience real quick, Adam?
I mean, just one, like, obviously our main pitch to everybody is that financial education is so important, right? Because it'll set you up and help you so much, right? Whether you do it on YouTube, there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube, or whether you use another resource or like Educated Wallet, like, make that a priority to educate yourself, about everything you possibly can, but finances and your money, so that you can gain that confidence. Because I've seen that the change that happens and that shift that happens with people, right, where they don't feel that confident. And so again, they don't feel like they can make good decisions, and it stops them from doing certain things. And then they gain a little bit of education, right? Sometimes people think like, well, I gotta go through, like, I gotta learn all this stuff and everything about the stock market. And they don't. They just have to learn a few simple things, and it creates that confidence to then really set you on a good path. And so, like, we stress the importance of educating yourself about your money and your finances.
That's awesome.
Whatever resource you're going to use, go, make that a priority.
Yeah, and just stay consistent and just focusing on that, because I know there's a lot of tools, a lot of vehicles, and I really appreciate you just being on and just sharing your wisdom, your knowledge. Like I said, guys, you can actually reach out to him with the description below with all of his links and his contact information. But Adam, we really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.